I'm Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Today I'm going to be showing you how to put tassels on the end of a scarf. The scarf that I'm using today is a Harry Potter scarf that I designed for a child of a friend of mine, and it is done completely in the Marguerite stitch. I used Yarn Bee's Must Be Merino and worked in navy blue and silver, and so I'm going to just put some navy blue and silver tassels on the end. I've done one side, and so I'm going to show you how to do tassels from the other side. So the first thing that you'll notice is that the knots have a front side and a back side. The front side has sort of these horizontal bars, and then the back side has sort of like a pucker where you can see a little bit of the scarf coming through on the contrasting colored tassel here. This is important because when you put the scarf on, you want the tassels on the left and right side to both face the same direction. And so I'm going to open this up and put it on and show you what I mean here. So when I put this on, I need this to be the front side, and then this side of my project is going to be the front side. Most people, when they put it on, are going to loop it this direction. They're not going to put a twist in it. So if you lay it this way, your front side is going to be here and here. All right, so to make a tassel, you're going to need a couple of things. You're going to need the yarn that you're going to be using, a pretty large hook. I have an L, which is an 8mm hook here, and something to wrap your yarn around. I have a Nintendo DS case here. This is just what was handy when I made the first tassels. I wanted my tassels to be about this long, and so this is what I grabbed. You can use a DVD case. You can use a piece of cardboard. There are tools. Various companies make tassel makers that you can use, but pretty much anything that allows you to wrap the yarn around rigidly and won't change size as you wrap it. When I made my original tassels, I wrapped 8 times, so I have 16 strands hanging down here. You can make them pretty much any size that you want, but you have to keep in mind that you have to get all of the ends through a stitch at the same time. So if you go too big, it's going to be really difficult to do. I would say 8 to 10 is probably where I would stop and start making additional tassels. So if you want more tassel than I have here, I would make more smaller ones rather than bigger ones than I've made. To make your tassel, you just need to lay your yarn at the end of wherever you're going to wrap it and bring it all the way around to the other side. That's one complete wrap. So I've got my end hanging here and my end hanging here, and I'm going to cut it on this face. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I'm down to this end, and I'm going to turn it around so you can see. The Nintendo DS case is particularly well suited for tassel making because it's got this notch here that I can stick my scissors into. Okay, make sure that you've got a hold of your yarn on both sides, because once you cut this, it's going to want to spring off, and then you're going to have to lay all your tassels, and it's kind of a waste of wrapping it. You could have just cut 8 lengths, aiming to get them the same. So I'm going to stick my scissors in here and make the cut, and I've got a hold of my yarn, and then I'm going to reach around to the back side and grab a hold of the middle all together. And it looks like I've forgotten to cut just this end one here. I'm just going to cut that guy right off. So I've got my 8 strands all held together right in the middle. They're all the same length, and I'm going to insert them into the scarf. All right, so I've laid my tassel down, and I've picked up my oversized hook. This, again, is just any large hook, much larger than whatever you use to work the project. I'm using an 8mm hook. And I'm going to insert my hook from the back towards the front. It doesn't actually matter which way you do it when you start. You can go from the front to the back or from the back to the front, as long as you do it the same for both sides. You have to remember which way you did it when you started. So I've got my hook here, and I've inserted it from the back to the front. I'm going to lay my tassel over the top, twist, and that will just kind of hold it onto the hook. And then this is sort of the tricky part. You've got to get the hook back out and pull it just enough that you've got this loop. And it takes a little bit of practice. A lot of times all the yarn wants to fall off the end of the hook. This is why we're using a really oversized hook, is because you want to hold as many of these loops on the end of this as possible. If you used a tiny hook, they would all just fall off the face of this hook. So this is the hook that I used for the scarf, and it's way too small to grab onto all of those threads. Now, I've pulled it up so that there's just a loop that I can get my fingers through. And I'm just going to take the ends of the tassel and poke them through the loop. Make sure you get all of them before you tighten. And then you just keep sliding and pulling until it's nice and snug. And you've got one tassel done. I'm working the tassels in alternating colors out of the 2 colors that are in my scarf. You can do any pattern that you like that works with the scarf that you've made. So I'm just going to show you one more time in the gray. Again, you line your yarn up on the end, and I like to leave mine just a little bit long, so when you cut these, because they're wrapped along the bottom, they're going to be a little bit longer. So if you just leave a little tail overhang here, it ends up working out a little bit better. So I'm going to wrap, and again, that's 1 complete wrap here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. If you pull really tight as you're wrapping, I'm pulling just enough to have tension on my yarn, but if you pull really tight, what's going to happen is your yarn is going to spring back, and your tassel is going to be much shorter than the box or the piece of cardboard that you're using to wrap. So just kind of wrap snug, but not like cranking on your yarn. All right, I'm going to turn this around again. Hanging onto my yarn on both sides. Grab my scissors. Cut all those ends. And make sure that I get this tail cut as well. Now I've got a hold of my tassel. I'm going to lay it down so that it doesn't get bothered here. I am going to insert my hook. Again, I'm going from back to front. Kind of lay that down. Pick up my tassel, find the center, loop it over my hook, twist, and then this is the tricky part. You've got to get, and it seems like it works best if I tip and turn my hook so that it comes through the way that you would make a stitch. A little bit more facing down than facing up. But however you can get it through, without losing any of your strands. If you lose any of your strands, I would strongly suggest that you pull the tassel out and start over, rather than trying to poke them through individually. It'll get really wonky on you. So pull them through until you've got a nice loop that you can open up wide. Tuck your tails all at the same time, and then pull it till it's tight, and then use your fingers to sort of snug that knot up. And that's all there is. Now you've got 2 tassels, and you just work all the way down the row, and I'll meet you back here when we're ready to trim our ends up. All right, I've got all of my tassels put onto the end of the scarf, and I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about some potential problems that you might run into and how to solve them. So on this tassel here, I didn't get all of the horizontal bars here to line up real nice. There's like a little loop sticking out of the end here, and a couple of these are kind of loose in comparison. So to fix this, all you have to do, even though it's already tight, you just go in and you start pulling individual yarns until the ones that you're looking for, that one did it. And then there's still a loop here, so I'm going to keep pulling on individual yarns until I find the one that's connected. That one pulled that one nice and snug. I haven't found the one that's going to make this loop. There it goes. That last loop just disappeared. And so that just fixes those up and tightens it, and now it looks nice and neat. So sometimes you might have to go in and find those little bits and just fix everything up a little bit. One of the other things that you might have questions about is where to place your tassels. So what I did here was that I decided to try and space mine as evenly as possible. And to do that, I basically went with every other marguerite stitch. and then just placed mine into the end single crochet. So I tried to line them up so that there's one about every other stitch. You might not necessarily be putting tassels onto this exact pattern, so just try and find some repeat that you can space them out evenly. The other thing that you can do is if you decide on a number, you can get out a like a ruler and try and space them roughly evenly. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just try and get them about as even as you can. The last step to the tassel portion of the scarf is to trim all of the edges nice and neat. When you put these on, they're not going to stay perfect. And so just trimming up the ends will make it look nice and even. I'm going to cut mine with a rotary cutter. You can certainly use scissors. I just think it's going to be easier to go with one quick pass rather than trying to cut. So if I take my scissors in here, they're gonna start shifting as I move along. And so I want one nice clean cut rather than using scissors. So I've got a quilting ruler here. You certainly don't have to use this. You could also just use a piece of cardboard or a ruler. My scarf runs at an angle at the end, so I'm gonna turn it so that it is aligned with one of the lines on my cutting mat, and then I'm just gonna sort of comb my tassels out, making sure that they're all laying as nicely as I can get them. And then lay my ruler on top, and I'm just going to start sliding it towards the end until I get to about the length of most of my tassels. And so that looks like it's about right there. I'm going to pick up my rotary cutter. And I want this to be straight, so I've got to turn this. There's a few that are just a little bit shorter, but I don't want to trim these too much. I can always trim more in a second. So I've got this aligned with an end of my quilting ruler. Looks like my scarf is still straight. I'm going to put my hand down on the ruler and make one quick pass and see how I did. I'm going to take this off. And we're just going to back this up. Looks like a couple of these didn't cut all the way through. Need to push a little bit harder on my rotary cutter there. Just clear these guys away and fluff these up and see how they look when they're laid out. And I think they look a lot neater. I don't have any that are like super long by comparison. I think it'll look a little bit strange if they're perfectly solid. They'll look like bangs cut straight across. So you want a little bit of variation, but you don't want like crazy long stragglers. I'm not super happy with this end one right here. So I am just going to take a pair of scissors and trim the end off of that. And you can just go in and clean those up a little bit. And again, you can just use scissors to cut. And then what you should do is grab the other end of your scarf and lay it next to it so that you trim your tassels about the same length as each other. So lay it, comb it all out, and trim those up as well. All right, I've got them all laid out nice and even, and I'm going to start along the edge of my other side and just get a nice clean cut along the edge. I kind of went backwards this time, hoping that I won't get so many stragglers. I probably need to change the blade on my rotary cutter if it's not making nice sharp cuts. So I've got that like that. I've got one little bitty straggler here that I'm going to... Oh, actually, it's just stuck to the mat. All right, I'm going to brush that away and then fluff this up, and we'll see how it looks. I think it looks pretty nice. So these are never going to hang perfectly straight, but you want them to be about the same length, and you don't have any crazy ones. And I think that's a pretty good look for the scarf. Tassels are an easy way to finish off any project. You could add them to rugs or scarves or baby blankets, anything you choose. If you're having any trouble following the tutorial, leave me a message in the comment section below, and I'll try to help however I can. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Experiments in Crafting. It's a great place to share pictures, and I love seeing everything that you guys are making. If you like this video, please hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future crafting videos. If you're already a subscriber and you don't seem to be getting notifications from the channel, click the little bell next to subscribe and change the drop-down from personalized to all. Thanks for watching!